Welcome to episode 42 of the Practice Squad, a show where we talk about football, shoot the breeze, and make even the replacement refs cringe. I'm your host and fourth string quarterback, Jeremy, joined each and every week by my co host and backup long snapper, Joseph. How's it going, man?
That a congratulatory clap for the Jets for keeping their perfect season
Yes.
alive.
And we are back after. Uh, we have not seen you guys in 3 weeks, so we are thrilled to be back. We are live right here on YouTube every Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. Pacific. If you like what you hear and want to support us, don't hesitate to like, share, and if you're feeling extra generous, subscribe. You can like, share, and subscribe even if you think you could run this show better than us. We've got this week, we've got games to talk about, overreactions to make. We're going to do our mid-season review, talk about standings, MVPs, team stats. We've got commentators to make fun of. And of course, we're going to round out our episode with wild predictions. So this is going to be probably a little bit longer episode tonight. So buckle up. We've got lots of fun stuff for you. So our first segment of the night is our game of the week. This week, we are just doing the game of the week. We're not doing a highlight game because we have so much other stuff we want to talk about. But our game of the week was Dolphins at Cardinals. Wow. This was a close game. This is not this game was back and forth all day. I think there were like 6 or 7 lead changes in this game.
There probably less because a lot of them they were top. Oh, yeah, no, you're right. Yes, at least I'll look at it right now.
Maybe
But there
not
was a
quite
lot.
that
It was
many,
a
but
very
it was
neck and neck.
like at no point did a team have the upper hand like until the final few seconds of the game.
Exactly.
Um so the final score was 34-31 Dolphins. And there was the flow of this game was fascinating. But I think that I'll just
Yes.
make a couple of brief comments and then I'll let Joseph drive since this is his Dolphins. But I thought the uh one thing I noticed was so Murray I thought he ran really well in this game. He put up, I think it was over 100 rushing yards. Um, and
Huh?
there was I did notice though one thing to nitpick because he had a really good game, but one thing to nitpick about him is that when he runs with the ball, his ball security, like the way he holds the ball, is very it's
It
kind
is
of
weird.
tentative, right? Like it looks very easy to punch out. And that is actually what happened on one of the plays. He was trying to escape pressure. The ball was punched out, and there was a fumble return for touchdown by Shaq Lawson. So that opened the game 7-0 Dolphins. I think Murray just needs to get a little bit more careful with his grip on the ball because he's clearly going to be a running quarterback, and you cannot fumble the ball like that on a regular basis if you're going to run the ball as frequently as he does. Um, and then on the flip side, I'll make a comment about Tua. I heard the guy pronounce it in the game, but I still can't say it,
Yeah.
so I'll just say Tua.
Same here.
Tua looked pretty good out there, actually. What was this? His second or third start? Second
Second
start.
start.
He had played he'd thrown 3 passes or whatever in that game, and then this was his second actual start, and he looked pretty good. Like he could throw a deep ball. He could kind of escape pressure. He had field awareness. He had good eyes. I thought he knew where the routes were, and um, overall, I thought he had a good presence, and he could also run too. He wasn't running all over the field like Murray was, but he could run if he needed to. So yeah, I was just kind of impressed overall. You got these 2 young quarterbacks, one a second year, the other a first year, on his second start, and they led their offenses the same way that any of the top elite quarterbacks in the league would run their offenses. It was really impressive to watch.
And as a
Yeah, go
okay,
ahead.
my turn now. Yeah, and as a kind of funny side note, they played against each other a couple years ago in a big college game. I think it was a playoff college game. they play against each other, um, with Tua winning. So yeah, I'll keep the order that we usually do, which is go through the like play by plays and then general comments. So obviously in the first quarter it was that big Shaq Lawson fumble recovery, and I took note here. It was towards the end of the first quarter, and it was down near the red zone. And maybe tell me if you remember this. There was a time where Tua showed excellent patience. He checked two other receivers, and they weren't open, and then made a third, like for his third check at the middle, made a very accurate, good throw for a first down to the receiver in the middle. And I was just impressed that he, one, looked, two, did not make a rush decision and looked for an open receiver, because sometimes quarterbacks, they don't have the pocket presence, or they feel like they're rushed and they have to go to their first or second option. And he didn't do that. He checked two options, they weren't there, and he went to the third option at the middle. So I was really impressed with that patience.
Was
Um,
that the
and in the
the
second quarter,
Preston Williams touchdown?
um,
Because that was middle of the
no,
field.
no. This was not a touchdown play. Um, this was, I think, a play or two before a
Okay.
touchdown. But they were near the end. They were near the red zone. Um, and then in the second quarter, that just perfect bomb by Murray to Kirk for the touchdown. That deep throw he had. Um, that was great. Murray has a good arm. I mean, both these guys were baseball. Murray was a baseball player. He actually was drafted pro for baseball, and he actually thought about playing, I think, shortstop for the A's, I think, but then decided to go into football. But he has an arm. He's shown it, and he's really improved his accuracy. Um, Murray clearly had talent. We saw that last year, but there were some kind of like ifs about what he could do. And I think he's really proven himself this year. And if they can keep adding pieces to that team and protect him well, he's a great scrambler, and his accuracy has really improved. So that was just one show of that. We have evidence of that with that throw. And then yeah, sadly Preston Williams got hurt again. Luckily, it's not going to be too long because it's just a sprain instead of like a break. Um, but Preston Williams is an upcoming receiver and really important, especially to balance out with Devontae Parker. So he could have a special career, in my opinion. And as Jeremy said, of course he got injured. He doesn't drink milk.
Yeah, that guy, he's like, he doesn't even fit in his jersey. But he is a talented, athletic guy, so he just needs to bulk
Yeah,
up a little
he was,
bit.
I think he was undrafted. I think he was undrafted, dude,
Really?
last year, or maybe in the seventh rounds. Yeah, but he's I've been impressed by him, and if he's healthy, him and Tua could be
Man,
a
I don't
great.
feel like we see a lot of successful undrafted receivers.
No, yeah, it's
A lot
not
more a
common,
lot more
and
running
with
backs, but we don't see receivers. So that's pretty cool.
with a healthy with a healthy roster, I think we have like a top 7 or 8 wide receiver core. I really do. Anyways, the third quarter, this one, and Jeremy, I do want your take on this because this goes into the uniqueness of PIs. Howard played well in this game, in my opinion, but he got called several PIs against him. But they weren't like doofus plays. Sometimes PIs are called when you're just kind of being a jerk, or you're not trying, or you make a dumb play. But Howard was just seem to be at the wrong time, at the wrong place at the wrong time. There's one against Hopkins where Hopkins pushed off to him, and then he pushed off to Hopkins. They called him last, I'm not really upset at Howard because I feel like he still played well with these. But there's one. It's 5.5 minutes left in the third quarter, and I think it's unfair because uh, Murray's basically throwing the ball away, right? He underthrew the ball completely. Howard is going for the ball, but because it was so underthrown, Hopkins not only has to like stop, Hopkins has to run towards the ball. Howard doesn't see him, and Howard runs into Hopkins, jumping him in the air for the ball, but he's going for the ball. If you have to break your route so dramatically and come back to the ball because you're throwing it up like it's a middle school and three flies up, to me that can't be pass interference because Howard is going in the direction of the ball. He's not trying to hit Hopkins. and he's going towards it. Hopkins got in the way because Murray threw it. It was underthrown. It wasn't the proper route. So that's a tough one. I would like to see them discuss those unique judgment calls because I don't think that's pass interference.
So I don't remember that specific play, but it sounds like you're describing a situation where the ball was not catchable.
No, it was catchable, and Hopkins had to come back to it, but he basically had to break his. Basically, the ball was just thrown up in the air. Howard was going towards it. As he was going towards it, he collided with Hopkins, who was coming back to get the ball, but it wasn't on his route. It wasn't like Howard was following Hopkins and causing
Yeah,
pass
I think
interference.
from what you're describing,
Murray,
it sounds like that shouldn't be PI because they have equal right to the ball.
yeah, and Howard just kind of collided with him because his eyes are on the ball. He's going for the ball. So yeah, that was a little frustrating because I think Howard got 3 or 4 PIs against him, and they were at big moments.
Yeah,
I think.
it's funny
So
you said that he had a good game because he was actually my least player of the game for that reason.
So I do. Well, yeah, but I personally don't think those PIs were like necessarily bad PIs. Like I think there's some context there in my opinion because I watched them and I watched some replays and I'm
I felt like there was some situational
yeah
awareness that was lacking on a couple of those.
okay.
Um,
Um, and then in the remaining in the third quarter, um, yes, I'm a Dolphins fan, but still I have to be objective. There was not a personal foul called that should have been called against the Dolphins. They pushed Murray out late on a run. They hit him late, and it was not called. And the announcer commented on it, and they were correct. So the Dolphins, and I think that was a critical moment because we're talking third quarter here.
it's
It
like
was a neck and neck
that
game.
play in the Super Bowl when Jimmy got pushed out of bounds late and it wasn't called.
So yeah, and then lastly, wrap up here. Fourth quarter, Tua made a great run, 17 yards. But he needs to be careful. Um, he's not a big guy. He's not Big Ben, Andrew Luck, or Cam Newton. You know, so he made a lot. He had several runs where he didn't slide and he like took a hit. I'm like, Tua, this isn't college, and you're not a big guy, so take it easy. And then general comments. And I'll wrap up and let Jeremy say what he has to say. Thanks for letting me go this long. This is a really good game. One, Murray looked good. Good future for the Cardinals. I like it. Two, Tua looked good for a second major game. No major mistakes and had good patience. And then three, um, typically when you see a game where each team scores more than 30 points, you think, okay, bad defense. That wasn't the case here. This was a well-balanced game. It was just great back and forth. And yes, there was the fumble recovery, but that was just a great play. Back, Boston picked it up. But outside of that, it wasn't like there were big defensive mistakes or like a bad defensive play. It was just a good game, and it was consistent. Each it's like every other possession, the team scored a touchdown. So I thought it was a very good game. I'm glad we did it for game of the week.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Tua didn't have any major mistakes. I mean, he had 2 plays that I thought were pretty suspect. One was the one where he threw it away to a Cardinal and it was an interception that was overturned.
Oh,
I mean, if you're going to throw the ball away, you have to throw higher, right? It has to be uncatchable.
That's fair.
And then the other play was when he threw the ball and nailed his own tackle and got an intentional grounding call.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It'll go down in history as not the butt fumble, the butt pass that got him the intentional grounding call. So that was just a kind of a rookie mistake. But yeah, no, overall, like so I gotta say, I am glad that I'm not a fan of either of those teams because winning because the other team was short on a field goal that would have gone through if it just had a little more juice in it is scary.
I know. Well, like when he kicked it, I thought for sure I was like, okay, that was a made kick, and I did not see them wave it no good. I was like, okay, I guess Tua's gonna have to drive down. Is he gonna be able to do it? And then I see the kicker keep looking at like, what is the kicker thinking? Like, that was a perfect kick. And then the score didn't change. And I'm like, what happened?
I think it was I don't know how many yards it was. 49. Okay, yeah, because the
49.
Dolphins kicked that epic 56-yard field goal to close out the half.
56, yeah. Dude, that guy has made all of his field goals this year, including I think 4 from 50
Wow.
plus. And he had a franchise record for I think most consecutive field goals made. For the
I
Dolphins.
smell a 4-year, $28 million contract coming down the pipe for him.
All right, we got to move
Yeah,
on.
so fun game. The secondaries were weak and there was a lot of pass interference calls, but that's really the only blemish on the game. I thought it was a really fun game to watch. Okay, so our second segment of the night is Who Wrecked Face this week, and we've got some good ones for you this week. So Joseph's going to start off with the quarterbacks and then one kind of special thing, and then I'll take the rest.
So yeah, sticking to the Cardinals game, Kyler Murray, 21 of 26, 283 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. But then you have to add with that, which by the way is 150.5 passer rating. But then you have to add to that his 106 rushing yards with a touchdown. And then Aaron Rodgers, 25 of 31, which is third. That's over 80%. 305, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Josh Allen, 31 of 38, 415 passing yards to beat the Seahawks. 3 touchdowns, no picks, and also a rushing touchdown. And then Patrick Mahomes, doing what he always does, 30 of 45, 372 for 4 touchdowns and no picks. And then who got wrecked? Was it Tom Brady? Just him? No. It was the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers team just got wrecked. Here's Brady. 22 of 38 for 209, 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. It's like he was competing to see if he could balance out the touchdown interception differential between his counterpart Breeze, who had 4 touchdowns and 0 picks. So I think Brady was trying to make that a net 0, and he almost got there. And then they're rushing. This is bad. Ready for this? 5 carries, 8 yards. So Brady had almost as many picks as his team did carries. How does your team only have 5 rush? I don't get it, especially after Brady put up a stinker. So the Bucs got wrecked. They were a field goal away from being shut out at home. And yes, they're still a playoff team. Yes, they have potential and they're good, but they've shown some inconsistencies this year. This and then the blunder against the Bears. So, okay, watch out AFC South because, yeah.
That's all the proof I need that this is a passing league.
Okay.
All right, so I've got a running back, 2 wide receivers, and 2 defensive players. Running back, he's on this list again. Dalvin Cook, 22 carries for 206 yards, a 9.4 average, 2 touchdowns. And add to that 2 receptions on 2 targets for 46 yards. So 2 big chunk plays. Then my 2 receivers this week are the second 49er to make this list, but the first 49er wide receiver to make this list. Richie James, 9 receptions on 13 targets, 184 yards and a touchdown.
Ooh.
And then Devontae Adams, and these receivers got these numbers in the same game because the Niners played the Packers this last week. Devontae Adams, wide receiver, Green Bay, 10 receptions on 12 targets for 173 yards and a touchdown. So epic. And then the last 2 are defensive players. And I forgot to put where this guy's from. I think it's, hold on, let me make sure I get this right. Yes. From the Vikings, linebacker Eric Wilson, 13 tackles, half sack, and an interception. So he got it all done this week. And last but not least, Darius Leonard, linebacker for the Colts, 15 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. That, folks, is what we call a tackling machine.
Who was it?
Darius Leonard.
I missed the name.
What was that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, for the Colts. That guy.
Yeah. I think is he a second year or third year?
Third year.
Yeah.
second or third. He got robbed of a Pro Bowl or Rookie of the Year, I think, in his rookie year. He was crazy
Yeah,
his rookie year.
I
Robbed.
think he's a top 5 linebacker in the league right now. Easily. Okay, our third segment is our news stories segment. We've got so you'll be familiar with this segment is our overreactions. And we're going to be covering the week 6 and week 7 overreactions from your friendly neighborhood ESPN staff writer Dan Graziano. So, starting with the week 6 overreactions. So, we're going back a couple weeks. So, if we need to provide context for a couple of these, we will. So, the first one is the Steelers are the NFL's best team, and he thinks that is an overreaction. How about this? Why don't you go first, Joseph, and then if I have any thoughts, I'll throw them in after.
Yeah, and then so I guess the person will lead off saying it. The other person will respond, and we'll take turns.
So you respond with what you think.
So I don't think this is an overreaction. They were 6-0, and I think I just put a beat down on the Browns. Like it's one thing, like even if you don't think they're a top team, like the best team, but they're like top 3 or 5, that's enough to say not an overreaction, right? If they're in the debate, that's enough to say not an overreaction. So he kind of set himself up by making it like be the best team. Because if he thinks they're the top 3 team, then it's still good enough to say not overreaction. So no, I don't think this is overreaction. The Steelers are legit. They're a balanced team, great defense, good enough offensive weapons, and they're getting the job done well. So
yeah, I agree. And this was several weeks ago. They are now still undefeated, so it's even less of a, or it's even more of a not overreaction now that we're halfway through the season.
Exactly.
All right, the next one is the Patriots will miss the playoffs. And keep in mind context, this was after they lost 18-12 to the Broncos the week before they got creamed by the Niners. He said this was an overreaction.
Yeah, so at that time they were 2-3. And but by that point, like clearly the Bills were gonna take the division, and it's like, okay, the Patriots probably sneak out a wild card. But by now, yes, they're not making the playoffs. They're gonna finish 6-10 at best, in my opinion. So it's
not an overreaction then, and it's even more not an overreaction now. Okay, Ryan Tannehill should be in the MVP discussion. This was disappointing. He said this is not an overreaction.
Correct. Yeah, that's not. He shouldn't have been. He shouldn't be now. And like he shouldn't have been then. Like Ryan Tannehill has kind of changed his career around. There's been some fun debate that it's really Adam Gase for the Jets because you play for Adam Gase, you're bad, I guess. But like Ryan Tannehill, if you have to put him in the quote unquote MVP race, I guess he's top 5 or 6. But there's at least 3 candidates who are sufficiently above him that then we have to define what it means by in the MVP discussion. And I don't think he's in the MVP discussion. Therefore, I think it's an overreaction.
Agreed. Nothing to add to that. The next one is the Bears defense can carry them to the playoffs. Verdict, not an overreaction.
False. That's when you have that extra. Okay. I don't want to forget there's that extra wild card team. So to me, it's not enough. Like there has to be some baseline of how much Nick Foles and offense credit you give them. But to just say the defense can carry them to the playoffs, okay, maybe if 9 wins is good enough. But that's not guaranteed, right? Rams, Cardinals, Bucks. I'm going to say this is somewhere between a reaction and an overreaction. This is a tough one, but I'm not willing to necessarily agree with him.
Yeah, as far as points allowed, the Bears are in like around like the top 8 or so, meaning the top 8 best defenses as far as points allowed, and they're still minus 12 in differential. Their offense is really putrid, And I don't think that I think that 9-7 might be enough to make the playoffs, but I'm not convinced that they're 5-4 right now. That means they'd have to close out uh what 4-4 to make it,
Yeah,
and or no 4-3,
four,
4-3 to
four and
make it,
three.
and I'm not convinced they can do that. So yeah, I'd say this is also false. And then the final one for week 6 was the Packers aren't as good as their record. Verdict overreaction.
So Jeremy and I have struggled with this one because we have thought the Packers have been inflated the past couple of years, and that was our big concern going into this year. They had that one stinker game after I think coming off that crazy awesome win against the Saints. But so when this was said back then, I would have thought I'm leaning towards not an overreaction because I do think the Packers are a little inflated. But with these past few games, and getting Devontae Adams back, because the Packers are what 6-2, right?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's not an overreaction. Or no, I guess it is an overreaction. They are not inflated. Is what I'm trying to say. Rodgers is playing great. Adams is back. 6-2 seems right up their alley. They're 8-0 or 4-4. I'd talk about inflation or deflation, but I think that they're just right where they should be and make sense
Yeah,
based on their
I
play.
agree. All right, so that covers the week 6 overreactions. Now we'll move on to the week 7.
Let me.
Okay,
How
yeah,
about I
go
read
for it.
these since
Go
you did
for
all
it.
those? I can read them so you can get an
Yeah,
opportunity.
I didn't know
That's
if you
fine.
had the article up or not.
Oh yeah, so week 7. So Mike McCarthy will be one and done in Dallas, and his verdict is not an overreaction.
Um, I All right, so I'll give my answer and then I'll explain a little bit. So I would say that this is an overreaction for a couple reasons. One is, yes, Mike McCarthy struggled a little bit in that end with the Packers. There was some drama and he got kicked out, but he is still a good coach. I think he is. And he's only been in Dallas 1 year. And your quarterback, who is the engine of your team, got hurt and is not coming back this year, probably. And you have a bad defense, which is, as far as I know, is not his fault because I don't think he's one of those coaches that also makes personnel decisions. So I would say because of their catastrophic situation this year, that even though they're going to have a bad record and they're in a bad division where even a bad record could still get you to the playoffs, I think this is a situation where if he can get the team a couple more wins, I think he'll be fine. I don't think it's worth it to. I think they need to wait one more year to see if, when they get people healthy again, what he can do. And if Prescott comes back next year and has a decent year and they still can't make the playoffs, then sure, I would reevaluate McCarthy as being the right guy for them. But I feel like for now, I think this is an overreaction.
I'm torn. I see arguments from both sides. If I did have more clarity about if he made more defensive calls, then sure, I'd more so agree. And the thing is, Dak was putting up historic. Like, he was on pace for like almost 7,000 yards.
Which is almost
He
as
was going
many
to
as
get at least
Teddy
5.
Bridgewater.
Just
Yes.
in this past game. He was going to get 5,000 minimum. He was going to break the record for most yards in a season. And he was doing everything he could. I think Elliott's had a decent year. That defense was putrid, and they just couldn't get past teams they should have got past. So it might have been a rash decision. Maybe this is something where like the not overreaction is based on what will happen versus what should happen. That's what makes it more tough. I don't think that he necessarily should be one and done, but I can see how that will happen. If the NFC East was better, then that would help him. But the NFC East is trash. So if they can't make the playoffs with like 5 wins, when the Eagles might get there with like 6, he might get canned. But yeah, the Patriots.
I was just gonna say real quick there,
That's
even though everybody in that division is putrid, the Cowboys are only 1 game back from the Eagles. So
fair. No,
there's a
that's
long
fair.
way to
And
go
if they
before
had
we know
Prescott,
whether the Cowboys are actually going to make it or not.
that's fair. And if they had Prescott, then I think they would clearly be
I
the
agree.
division winner. And so that's the Patriots need to bench Cam Newton and find out what they have in Jarrett Stidham.
I think it's Stidham.
Okay. And Dan says this is an overreaction. So it's an overreaction to bench Cam.
So this was right after the game that they got creamed by the Niners in Foxborough. And I think he threw 2 picks that day. Which is probably why this article was written. I think that the problem, I don't think Cam is a barn burner. I think his sort of odd streak of like elite play mixed in with like not very good play back with the Panthers, I think that's over. I don't think he is ever going to be an elite type guy again, but I think he's good enough to take a team that has a solid run game and a good defense, at least to the playoffs. The problem is that I think the Patriots roster is just really bereft of talent. So I personally don't think Cam is the problem. So like you were having the trouble with Mike McCarthy about should versus would or will. I think this is a situation where I would say Cam shouldn't be benched, and I think that he might, just because Bill Belichick is a strict guy, and he's going to want to. I think he's going to want to see what his other guys have if they're not performing well. So, I would say that this is not an overreaction in reality, even though Dan Graziano thinks it's an overreaction.
Yeah, I think I'll just stick with your analysis. That was good. Tom Brady and the Bucks don't need Antonio Brown. Not overreaction.
Yeah, I agree with this, and I even texted Joseph today because I was like, "Wait, Antonio Brown caught passes for the Bucks this week? What the heck?" I didn't actually know that happened. I guess he got signed this last week.
Yeah.
So, sure, the thing is, I think the wide receiver core for the Bucks is oversaturated now. So Brown, sure, he'll probably play well if he can stay on the team, but there's other guys that I think can play equally well. So there's only so many balls to catch, and I don't think if they were in a situation where like Mike Evans got hurt and was going to be out for 8 games, then I would think differently. But since everybody's healthy and the passing game is firing on all cylinders, minus whatever that turd is that they put up this week at the Saints, I would say that they don't need Antonio Brown. So I would agree with Graziano on this one, that's not an overreaction.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. And it's one of those things where Brown, he's almost the word, is it the right word? It's almost kind of pointless to have someone like Brown on your team unless he's going to be like your top receiver. So like either Brady and Brown connect and Brown is clearly your number one guy, or you're just paying for someone to be your second or third option who shouldn't be your second or third option.
Right. Exactly.
Especially this late in the season. Yeah. Baker Mayfield is just fine. Not an overreaction. I'll give my comments first just to say that I don't really know or really care. So
I don't know what to think about Baker Mayfield, dude. I just
no, same here.
He's inconsistent.
He
showed flashes of being good, and he has also showed flashes of being in commercials. So I don't know. Odell Beckham's out, so now we're like, in this weird territory where he doesn't have a lot of great people to throw to, and I think that'll be the true test. I would say that this might be an overreaction. I think this might be the rest of this season might potentially look a little ugly for him.
Okay. Yeah. Um, Last one here. Todd Gurley is the reason the Falcons lost Sunday. Do you know the context behind this? If not, I can talk to it.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and talk about it, because I didn't watch the game.
Yeah, so it was towards the end, and I can read part of this here, but basically towards the end, and they had the ball on the 10-yard line just a minute to go, and Lions had all their timeouts used up, so the Falcons could have run the clock down, and Gurley got the ball, and what you could see, what they said they saw, I didn't see this, but what they said they saw, and what was discussed that was discussed, was to not score a touchdown, and you can kind of see that back of his mind when he just before he crosses the plane, he like tries to fall and not cross the plane, but like within inches, he crossed the plane with the ball, and they scored a touchdown, which then gave time for the Lions to come back and have a game-winning touchdown and a 2-point conversion. So you could obviously say yes, the summation of the game could have been better, but if that one play had been different, where he did not score a touchdown, the Falcons would have won unless he fumbled it. So yeah, in one sense, they did lose because of him.
So this is saying that a 2-point conversion gave them a 22-16 lead, which means that before he scored the touchdown, they were down 16-14.
Yeah. Oh, I guess they would have kicked 25-yard field goal. I guess that would have
Okay,
been...
so they would have burned down the clock to 3 seconds and then kicked. Is what you're saying? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it sounds like this is not. I mean, I can't speak to what other mistakes were committed by the Falcons throughout that game. So it's sometimes it's a little bit disingenuous to pick off one play or one thing and say, oh, that's why they lost, just because it's at the end of the game, because there's plenty of things throughout a game that could be also the reason why you lost. So just philosophically, I'd probably say that it's an overreaction. So I would agree.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so we're done with that segment. So we're going to move on to our fourth segment, which is our juicy mid-year review, mid-season review. So we're going to talk about 3 things. We're going to talk about who we think at this point is the MVP, who we think is going to make it to the playoffs based on current standings and remaining schedules, and then our last is looking at some interesting team statistics at the halfway point of the season. So at this point,
and Dolphins Niners.
Yeah, that's actually, I broke that into a separate. That'll be segment number 5. So
okay.
At this point in the season, just to provide some context, most teams have played, or I shouldn't say most, a lot of teams have played 8 games and a lot of teams have played 9 games due to buys. So we really are right at that halfway point in the season. So leading off with MVP, Joseph, do you want to go first on your MVP analysis?
Yeah. So there's really just 3 names. I'll give an honorable mention, and that is Josh Allen. He was number 1 or number 2 for most of the first 4 to 6 games, but he had kind of a 2-game drop. I don't know the word I was looking for, but he dropped back 2 games, so he's not really there. So I have three players, and if I had to, I'd recommend 2 tiers. Though the guys in second and third do have a chance. But number 3 is Patrick Mahomes. Very efficient. Put some big games against some good teams, and is just he's being Patrick Mahomes, and he's clear Hall of Famer one day. But he's played one more game than the guy number 2, which is Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers' stats are right there with him. So that one extra game, and Aaron Rodgers has some big games against some good teams too, like the Saints. So Aaron Rodgers is also incredible efficiency this year, on pace for like 40 something touchdowns and like 3 picks or whatever, which is a typical Aaron Rodgers thing. But number one, no matter how much this hurts, it is obvious. Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is in his own tier, and it's clearly number one. I think it's already decided that Russell Wilson is going to have like a no worse than like a top 15 season of all time. He's completing like 70% or more of his passes. He's on pace for like 5,000 yards, so you know he's going to get at least 45 or so hundred. And he's on pace for like 56 touchdowns. So he's outside of an injury, he's going to get at least 45 of those. So 4,700 yards and 45 touchdowns with high 60s, a 70% completion percentage, just automatically puts him in like top 12 and possibly like top 6 or 7 season of all time. So right now it's clearly Wilson, and he would have to drop back because they're all three playing at great levels. They're all three on pace for great seasons, but Wilson's just out of this league right now. So he'd have to fall back for Rodgers or Mahomes to get it.
So this is fascinating because I had the same 3 players but in a different order. And I also had Josh Allen as in the hunt. I think he did fall off a little bit, but I think he still in 8 games could potentially make up what he needs to win if some of these other guys perform worse. So I actually had Mahomes first, and I had Wilson second and Rodgers third, and here's why. So I made a little table, an Excel table, looking at a bunch of different statistics and how the quarterbacks ranked compared to each other. I looked at passing yards per game, touchdowns minus interceptions, quarterback rating, rushing touchdowns, and completion percentage. And Wilson ranked overall, if you did like a weighted ranking, he ranked the best in most of the categories. But here's the problem with Wilson, and the reason why he's number 2 and Mahomes is number 1. The last couple of games, not the last 2 games, but the 2 games that the Seahawks have lost have been complete stinkers for Wilson. He's thrown 8 interceptions, which is actually way more than any of the other quarterbacks that are like in the top 8 in touchdowns. And for me, that knocked him back a spot because Mahomes, I feel like, is putting up, even though he has 3 less touchdowns, with an extra game played, he's putting up more consistently good numbers than Wilson is. And has, I think, roughly equal rushing stats. Wilson has, I think, 1 rushing touchdown and Mahomes has 2. I think Wilson has more yards, but so I felt like just because of consistency, Mahomes ranked just a hair higher. But I'm right. Talking about something that like 1 game could change my mind about this. So, and it was hard to take into account the fact that Mahomes has played 9 and and Rodgers have played 8. That was difficult. And then Rodgers I see as someone that is right there. Like these guys in my head are basically equal, so I'm splitting hairs. But Rodgers just statistically ranked worse in enough categories for me to put him third. But he is easily someone that could overtake the 2 if he keeps playing the way he's playing.
Okay.
But I think we can agree that these 3 are in a tier of their own, and besides a miracle Josh Allen situation, there's no one else that will compete for this award.
Except Aaron Donald.
Yeah, except Aaron Donald, who's in the running every year. Because not only will he get 54 sacks, he will also find a way to score touchdowns. So, okay, so our next one is the playoff standings. I'll go ahead and go through mine real quick, and I think they're mostly the same as Joseph's, so I guess we can just debate on the margins. So, for the NFC East, or for the NFC, I did division winners. For the East is the Eagles, North the Packers, NFC South the Saints, And NFC West, the Seahawks. Those were pretty easy decisions. I don't really think I had to debate any of them, except maybe the South might come down to a game or so between the Saints and the Bucks. But all the other ones seemed pretty clear. And then the wild cards, I have Bucks, Cardinals, and then a squeaker between the Rams and the Bears, but I picked the Rams.
Yeah, I had the exact same, didn't I? I told you before, and
yeah. The Bears are. Yeah, I wrote yours down, and the Bears are in the hunt.
Same.
Like if one of either the Cardinals or the Rams collapses, the Bears will make it.
Yeah, but the Rams already beat the Bears and have the tiebreak against them, and I've seen enough go with the Cardinals. So yeah, Jeremy and I have the exact same NFC.
Yes. And then for the AFC, we've got the East is pretty clearly the Bills. The North, I think, pretty clearly is the Steelers. South, Titans, and then West is clearly the Chiefs. Wild cards, you've got Ravens are the heaviest favorite, Browns, and Dolphins. And Joseph and I discussed this a little bit before the show, but we both believe that the Raiders and the Colts are in the hunt, but that the Dolphins will probably make. So the way we ranked it was Ravens and Dolphins, and then Browns, Raiders, Colts would duke it out for the last one. I said Browns, Joseph said Raiders, but it's really close.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah, that is so tough. I looked at this right before the show. Looked at all three of their schedules. The Colts and the Dolphins both play the Raiders in Las Vegas, so that actually would be interesting how that game will probably work out tie breaks. My reasoning for going to the Raiders is I think they have either the easiest or second easiest of the remaining schedule. And the Browns, like Baker Mayfield's inconsistent, right? And they lost Odell Beckham. That's pretty big. And they still have Steelers and I'll just look at this. Why not? They still have Texans, Titans, Ravens, Steelers. Whereas the Colts, the reason why I didn't go with them is because they've also been a little inconsistent. Jonathan Taylor hasn't been a great running rusher, though Philip Rivers has been pretty good, but he's low on touchdowns. They still have 4 division games left, Texans and Titans. I feel like that's 3 losses right now, 4 games. And on top of that, they still have the Raiders' interesting tiebreak game, and they still have Packers and Steelers. That's brutal. So, whereas the Raiders, they have both Bronco games, Falcons, Jets, Chargers, Dolphins. So I think the Raiders get it because they're healthier and they have an easier schedule, but it's going to be very close. And I agree, Dolphins and Ravens are more of the favorites for the wild card.
Okay, yeah, I that's good analysis, and it was really tough. Those last slots were tough to decide. And I think you're right. I think it will come down to those head-to-head games. All right, so notably missing from that list was the San Francisco 49ers, who have suffered one of the greatest collapse. Well, I shouldn't say what greatest collapse record-wise, but possibly the worst games missed due to injury in the history of the NFL, which we'll talk about that in a minute. We have a special segment to talk about the Dolphins and Niners in a couple of minutes. So a lot changes in 3 weeks is my point. We haven't seen you guys in 3 weeks, and in that time, the Niners have gone from a team that I thought were going to make the playoffs to now a team that I don't think is going to make the playoffs. So some interesting team stats. So I'm just going to kind of blow through these. And I think Joseph had a couple of interesting things he found in the statistics. So the first one is passing offense by yards. The number 1 team is the Seahawks with 298.1 yards per game. Rushing offense by yards, the number 1 team, not surprisingly, is the Ravens, 170.1 yards per game. They were also number 1 last season as well. Total offense in yards, this surprised me a little bit. The Cardinals are in the lead on this one with 422 total yards per game. And then another surprise, the number 2 team was the Chargers at 420 yards per game. Not what I expected.
Herbert, man. Yeah, Herbert's putting up beast numbers.
And then by points, offense by points, the Seahawks lead the league with 34.3 points per game, and the Chiefs are second with 31.8 points per game. Moving on to defense, passing defense in yards. This was a shocker. The football team is giving up 185.6 passing yards per game. I didn't look at this. Maybe you did. They might have just a horrific run defense that's giving up like a lot of yards or something. I don't know, but they're the leader in passing defense by yards. The leader in rushing defense, not surprisingly, by yards is the Bucks at 77.9 yards per game. They have a stout defensive line. The leaders in total defense by yards are the Colts at 290 per game and the Rams at 291.9 yards per game. The best defense by points is the Ravens, 17.8 points per game, and the Rams are second with 19 points per game. And then the last categories have to do with turnovers. So the team with the most takeaways, and this is mostly due to the game against the Packers, just kidding, was the Bucks at 16 takeaways. The most giveaways, dun 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 dun, the Cowboys, thank you Mike McCarthy, 20 giveaways. And
oh my god.
And the best turnover ratio is the Titans are plus 10, and the worst is the Cowboys at minus 13. So we said earlier that the Cowboys have a bad defense and a bad offense now without Dak Prescott, and we were not kidding.
Well, what's amazing is the delta between the Cowboys and the next team, which is the Eagles, which, by the way, 3 of the 4 worst teams are from the NFC.
Not surprised again.
The delta between the Cowboys and the second worst team is 6, which is almost as high as second to last place in and of itself. So the Cowboys are not just like the worst team; they're
bottom
like
of
double
the barrel
the
worst.
Yeah. Oh yeah, my comments here. I'll just go in the same order that Jeremy went. Like words is turnovers is at +5 turnovers. That's good. The defense has been, I think it was one of the games I watched a few weeks ago. It's like, how about them Dolphins defense? And I kind of like chuckled. I was like, yeah, I guess, yeah. And then, but their defense they've got a fire under them. And then
wait, before you move on to offense, can I just tell you something? This is a
what?
Just a trick that I learned. That defense wins championships.
Even in a passing league. I actually didn't really have much to say about the offense. It's the defense I want to talk about. So back to the Dolphins, who are 4th in points per game at 20.1. How about that? But for total yards per game, we're like, what is that? 20th? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 21st. So just kind of interesting how that does not really track. And then the Seahawks are 4th rush defense and dead last in pass.
Yeah, it's super weird, but I mean, I knew that because I've watched them a lot, but it is weird, right? Like they're just really stout on the line against the run, but they have no pass rush. So their secondary just gets creamed out every game. And yet,
they're giving up 362 yards a game, dude. That's pathetic.
Imagine where the Seahawks would be if Russell Wilson got hurt.
Oh my goodness, they would. The irony is, by that definition, that's another reason why he's MVP.
Yes.
Like
I've said all along that he is the hard carry on that team.
Yeah, no, if he got hurt, like they'd be competing with the Vikings and Texans for one of the worst teams. The That's all I wanted to add with though.
All right, so moving on to our fifth segment. This is our segment where we're just going to spend a couple short minutes talking about the Dolphins and the Niners and sort of what the rest of the season looks like for them. So I'll start with the Niners. The Niners are currently 4-5, and we're not out of the thick of our tough games in the schedule yet. We still have to play at the Saints this upcoming Sunday. We have another game against the Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks, one each in the division, and we still have to play the Bills. So, absolute best case scenario with how we've played, we'll walk away with 2 wins, but I think more likely we'll probably pluck one division game and lose all the rest, which would put us at 5-9. And then we do have a couple easy games against the football team and the Dallas Cowgirls. So we'll probably be 7-9 is my guess, which is at least one game short of making the playoffs, which is why I didn't put them in my playoff list. I mean, what can you say? We've lost at some point in the season. All of our best players have missed time due to injury. And when I say all, I literally mean all. Like there's maybe 3 or 4 starters that have not missed time, and the other like 25 starters have missed multiple games. Jimmy can't stay healthy with the ankle. We lost Nick Bosa in the second game. We never had Dee Ford really, so we have no pass rush. We've had our secondary got totally ravaged. Our offensive line played poorly, and then guys have been kind of trickling off due to COVID issues. Our receivers came into the season really hurt. Kittle's out, and then we have just our backup quarterbacks are playing below potential right now, so they're just playing horribly. And so what do you expect? I mean, at this point, you can't. This is what happens when you have injuries like that, and I think this is. I was reading the NFL Power Rankings, and the first line for the Niners was, sometimes it's just not your year. And I think that is probably the single best sentence to describe what's happened to the Niners. It's just not their year this year.
Yeah, dude, I feel for you, and I went back and I actually listened to our first or second episode ever. I went through and listened to part of it, and I was jumping through trying to find something, and I had just by coincidence jumped to where you were talking about like the Niners, and you had mentioned about like said, yeah, the past couple of years we've just been plagued with injuries, and I was like, this is not just a 1-year thing. The Niners in the past 5 years have probably been the worst injury-prone team.
Yeah, no doubt.
So it is sad, and that's all I'll say. All right, for the Dolphins, I'll kind of split up into 2 parts. Where are we now, and how did we get there, and where I think we'll be, and how did we get there? So where are we now? We're 5-3, and legitimately looking like we're going to make the playoffs. How did we get there? So we have already played the entire NFC West. And going into the season, thinking, okay, maybe we win one of those, right? Maybe we win one. We've won 3 of them, and we had a legit shot at the Seahawks to win all 4. So that is amazing. That might be what Jeremy called it, the story of the year for that. And the reason why we may make the playoffs is because we went 3-1 against the NFC West. We put up semi-competitive to competitive matches against the Patriots and Bills in the first games. Crushed the Jets and did very well against the Rams. Our defense has improved, and I'm actually seeing like there's hope. Our defense actually seems to be talented. That front line is decent. Our secondary is good. Fitzpatrick gave us some gritty wins, but Tua's been looking good, and I see some hope not only for this year but next year with Tua. 5-3. And as to where we go, most likely we'll win 9 games. I think 10's a possibility, but that is a little bit of a stretch. I think the chances of us winning 8 is equal to us winning 10, but the most likely is 9. That should be enough. Yeah, that will be enough to get us into the playoffs. So looking ahead, so then I'll do the next 4 games. The next 4 games, we have Chargers, at Broncos, at Jets, Bengals. Honestly, if they only win 2 of those, I'd be disappointed. But they could win 3. I mean, they have a legit shot of winning all 4. But I think 3 is the most likely result of those 4 games. But let's say they only win 2 of those, okay? So now they're 7-5. The remaining 4 games are Chiefs, Patriots, at Raiders, at Bills. Now, when looking at this a few weeks ago, I thought, you know what, the Patriots are going to turn around. No, I think we can beat the Patriots. You know, playing in Foxborough. Actually, no, we're not playing in Foxborough. Even if we were playing in Foxborough, they don't have many fans there. But we're playing in Miami in December, and we have a good shot at beating the Patriots. Then there's the Raiders game, right? So I say we split. Worst case scenario, we split Patriots Raiders. That's 8 wins. Now we have to look at Chiefs and Bills. Chiefs, no, I'm not going to give it to us. They're going to win. But the Bills in Buffalo, so the weather could affect it. But what I was telling Jeremy the other day is the Bills may have their seed wrapped up by that point. It may be already clear by then that the Bills won't be the number 1 seed. Or they may not care about if they get the 2 or 3 seed based on the reigning seeds. And some of their last games, the Bills still have the Steelers to play. So the Bills may not even start all of their team by that point. So that gives them a reasonable 9 right there. And that had me assume they only won 2 of the next 4, and they can win 3 of the next 4, if not all 4 of them. So I think 9 wins is like a 60-70% chance, and 10 is not impossible. So I think they make the playoffs unless something dramatic happens. They're making the playoffs, and they might be a dark horse team as long as they don't play like the Chiefs or Steelers to open off. They might be a dark horse team and sneak in a playoff win.
Yeah, I think that's good analysis, and I think you guys. I mean, we both predicted that the Dolphins are going to make the playoffs this year, so yeah, I mean, maybe you guys are a year ahead of schedule on your rebuild, a year ahead, or a year quicker than we thought. So we'll have to see. All right, so our 6th segment is, of course, commentators say the darndest things, and boy, did they say some darndest things in the Dolphins-Cardinals game. I have 2, and then Joseph has a couple as well, so I'll read mine first. So the first one is not per se a darndest thing, just something that Joseph and I have nagged on for years now. And so during some random play, Cardinals had the ball. The guy says Murray is like, just throws a deep pass. It was just sort of an in the pocket pass. And the guy said, Murray has got elite quickness. And I just don't want to nitpick this, but I just love the different physics terms that are used in the NFL, like terms like acceleration, dynamic, quickness, speed. Like, I really, if you ask someone what they meant by quickness, I don't know if they'd be able to actually give you a good answer. It's one of those just fluff words that I think is funny. So that was more for me than anything else. And then the second one was great. There was a kick return. So Jakeem Grant, the Dolphins, was lined up to receive a kick return. And the commentator said, "Here is the dangerous Jakeem Grant." And then he gets easily and pathetically tackled at the 20.
I mean, he is dangerous, but in the context there, that was bad. So yeah. So I have 2 from the Jets game. I had 2 from the Dolphins game. I picked 1 because one of them is still good. I'll just paraphrase it now, so I guess I'll do all of them. He had asked I think his name is James Lofton. The other guy asked James Lofton for his grades for the quarterbacks, and he's like, "What do you say?" He says, "Well, I grade on a curve, um, and if you're leading in the game, you get an A, and they're tied right now, so both quarterbacks get an A minus. I grade easy, no homework, all that stuff." I'm like, "What? That's." I mean, I know he was. It was just kind of funny. It's like, just because you're winning, your quarterback doesn't automatically get an A. And if you're tied, now in that game at that time, I would have given them a B plus or A minus. But it's just how he said it was kind of silly. But here's one from the Dolphins game. I love this one. Same guy, and it's like, it's one of these that I know Jeremy and I are kind of like, that's not complete, and don't say stuff like that. But everyone says it. But here we go. So they're talking about Larry Fitzgerald and how awesome he is, and he says, "And I love how Larry has adapted his career, going from an outside receiver to an inside receiver, and not really worried about catches and numbers and totals, but really just about wins."
Nice.
And it's like, don't you get it? Performance is based on those things, and that leads to better wins, and they're connected. Stop doing that. And then two from the Jets game. So these are great. I don't even know which one to start with because they're okay. So the Jets had lost their rookie tackle, Mikai. I think it's Mikai Becton, who's a good player, good rookie. And when the announcer says, "Think about the Jets. They're without their starting quarterback, their best defensive player, and now arguably their best offensive player, Mikai Becton." And then after like a little pause, the other announcer says, "When you're 0-8, you're 0-8."
That's beautiful. What a nail in that coffin. That's great.
It was funny because it just like it seemed to be like there was a little pause, and he's like, "This is all I can really say to that." And then Joe Flacco, our beloved elite Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco had a touchdown pass, which, by the way, he passed Joe Montana for the passing yards list. So I don't know what that says about Joe Montana or today's passing league, probably both. But Joe Flacco passed Joe Montana on something. So after this, the announcers, I need to find out who this was because this is just embarrassing. He says, one of the best deep ball throwers over the course of his career.
Oh man.
And then I think the other announcer added to that, "That's how you pass Joe Montana on the all-time passing yards list, with a 50-yard touchdown." So let's see here. Who did Joe Flacco play contemporary with? Who are better deep ball passers? Oh, I don't know. Manning, Brady, Breeze, Rodgers, Roethlisberger. That's already 5. No, that's already 5. So get out of here with this. Joe Flacco is one of the best deep ball throwers.
That's amazing. I guess, yeah, you get pretty desperate when you're calling a game with the Jets, so you say a lot of crazy things.
So this weekend was a great week for commentators, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it sure was. All right, our final segment of the night is our predictions on Tricky Picks. I was our picks from 3 weeks ago. I was 3-0. Joseph was 2-1. I'm now 14-12-2. Joseph is 15-11-2. Did you do Tricky Picks for this week, Joseph? Okay.
Yes.
So let's do those now, and then we'll do the predictions.
Yeah, so Eagles Giants. What will occur? More touchdowns or turnovers or a tie? So turnovers are with a tie versus touchdowns.
Wait. What do you mean by tie?
Like there's 2 options. One option is there's more touchdowns. The other option is more turnovers or they're tied.
Oh, I see. Okay. I'll say more touchdowns.
Okay, I went with the TO or tie. Vikings Bears, you'll like this one. Will Dalvin Cook have more than 175 total yards? Here's the context. 1, he's already done it 3 times, including the last 2, and his season average is 129.
I hate it. You said I'd like it, and I hate it. Just kidding. 175 total yards?
more. So I guess 176. So more than 175 total
Okay,
yards.
Vikings are playing
rushing-
the Colts.
Bears.
I'm going to say less.
All right. I went yes. Going bold on this one. And this last one is a tricky pick special because we have two rookie quarterbacks going at it who are both might be in the running for best rookie quarterback this year. So Chargers at Dolphins, rookie showdown. I have here, was that 5 picks. And then, the winner gets the point. All right, so basically, I'm going to list out the stat, and then we're going to pick who's going to have the highest of that, Tua or Justin Herbert. Total touchdowns. I'm sorry. Yeah, total touchdown minus turnover differential. Who have the highest touchdown minus turnover differential?
Wait, are we talking about the team?
No, the quarterbacks. This is Tua versus
how does
Justin
a
Herbert,
player
the
have a
rookie.
turnover differential?
No. TD turnover differential. So 4 touchdowns, 2 picks is 2.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The differentials between
Herbert.
Same here. Total yards passing, and I guess receiving
Context, how is Herbert done with rushing this season?
I don't think he's been okay, but he's definitely had more passing yards.
I'm going to go with Tua.
All right, I went Justin because of the passing. Number of sacks.
Tua.
All right, I'm going Justin. I think Tua's going to escape a little better and is better on the run, and I think that Dolphins defense is going to go after it. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this. The Niners have Nick Bosa,
and
right?
the Chargers have Joey.
Joey Bosa. Okay, is Joey playing?
I think so. Let me really quick check their last game. So they play the Raiders, and in that game, Los Angeles defensive. So Joey Bosa was not listed.
Okay. Regardless, I still think I'll pick Justin, but that is something to know. So you went Tua for sacks?
Yes.
Okay. Passer rating, not QBR rating, so passer rating, the one that's 158.3.
Herbert.
Okay, I went Tua. And then completion percentage.
Tua.
Same here, which is I think Tua will be more efficient. I'm picking Herbert to be more prolific. All right, so those are our tricky
All right,
picks.
Tua Tagovailoa. Okay, so we had 3 weeks of NFL games off, so I had to combine our records. So we're not going to go through the individual picks for the last 3 weeks. So my record from the last 3 weeks was 30-12, and Joseph's was 32-10. So he picked up 2 games on me. I was ahead by 9, so now I'm ahead by 7. I'm 91-40-1 with a 69.5%, and Joseph is 84-47-1 with a 64.1%. We both have higher at this point. We both have higher percentages than either of our last 2 final season averages.
Wow.
So
okay.
If we can keep this up, we'll break our record this year.
Yeah, and I'm not feeling too bad now. There's 8 weeks left, and I'm only 7 down, so that's not unreasonable. Last year I was down by like 10 with like 3 weeks to go.
Well, we'll see. If you get too bold calling Dolphins games, then you might be screwed, but we'll see. All right, so our predictions for Week 10, I'll go ahead and read off the first one, give mine first, and then Joseph will take the second one, etc. So First game is Colts at Titans. I'm going Titans.
Same. Texans, Browns, going
Oof,
Texans.
okay, I'm going Browns on this one. Football team at Lions. Same.
Lions.
You're next.
Jacksonville at Packers.
Same.
Going Packers.
Eagles at Giants. This was tough, but I went Eagles.
Also tough. I'm going
Okay,
Giants.
So flip that one.
Tampa at Carolina. This is tough. Tough. I think Brady will bounce back, so I'm going Bucks. But Carolina's been a little sneaky, and they almost beat the Chiefs, and they scored 31 on the Chiefs. So but
I'm going Bucks as well, even though they're going to have to deal with 700 passing yards from Teddy Bridgewater.
and 5 touchdowns. All right. So
Broncos at Raiders. I'm going Raiders.
Same. Chargers, Miami. You know how I'm going.
I'm going the same. I picked Dolphins on this one.
All right. You're next.
Bills at Cardinals. I'm going Bills.
Very tough. Should be a very good game. I hope it's in our highlight reel. Going Bills. Seattle at Rams. Going Seattle.
I'm going Rams. So that's another difference.
Interesting. How come?
I think the pass rush is gonna just kill Wilson, and I think the I don't think the Seahawks defense is gonna have an answer for the Rams offense.
All right, good, fair enough. Niners, Saints, going Saints.
Same. Bengals at Steelers. I'm going Steelers.
Well, I've been on a Joe Burrow run for a while, but it ends now.
No
Steelers.
Longer Joe overrated. Ravens at Patriots. I'm going Ravens. Oh, did I jump on you on that one?
No worries. Same with Ravens. And then lastly, Monday night game here, Vikings Bears. I'm going Vikings. The Vikings have been a little deflated in their record, and Dalvin Cook is cooking. And as we talked about, the Bears not having a great, offense. And I think the Vikings edge this one out. So
I did pick the Bears. So that means we're different on 4 games. Right? Texans, Browns, Eagles, Giants, Seahawks, Rams, Vikings, Bears.
And just because they suffered this past week, the NFL graciously gave the Jets a bye. That's the reason why they gave them a bye.
So byes, Falcons, Cowboys, Chiefs, and Jets. They need to rest so that they can lose 8 more games.
7. They're 0-9.
Are they 0-9 now?
Yes.
Oh goodness. Okay. 7 more games. It's exhausting losing 7 games, man. All right, so our game of the week we decided is going to be 49ers Saints. And even though the Niners might be poopy, I think this will be a fun game. The Niners Saints games tend to be kind of wild. So, looking forward to that one. Yeah. We may not pick the Niners again, so this is a good week to pick them. All right, well, that was our mid-season review show, and I can now say that is a wrap for us this week. If you enjoyed tonight's episode or any of our past episodes, please like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube, as those are free ways for you to support our show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at The Practice Squad and at Neuralizer_. Just as a reminder, if you've missed past episodes, you can watch or listen to them right here on my YouTube channel. The show is online immediately after we go live, so if you missed any of our foolish banter, you can always rewind and start from the beginning. As always, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.